but she'll be coming on the show tomorrow, and I'll talk to her about that. And somebody who has been outspoken about this, and rightfully so. Somebody who's been had a pretty busy week, and I've been bugging him nonstop to come on the show because I know how busy Jon Ralston from the Nevada Independent has been, and I really do appreciate him joining us right now on the line. Jon, you've been a very busy man, rightfully so, for the last week, and you've done a great job, by the way, with all the.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you've done an awesome job. How you doing?
I'm tired.
I bet you've been a busy guy. Obviously, I want to talk to you, and thanks so much for coming on as always. I want to talk to you about, obviously, the local election spectrum, but I got to start with this Michelle Fiore story. Her comments yesterday and what she called Amy Tarkanian, I'm sure you would agree with me, it is disgusting. When you first heard this, see, it really didn't even surprise me because this is who Michelle Fiore is, and you spoke about that. But what do you make of this story?
Well, I often think my capacity for being shocked is one, but it's not. And not Michelle Fiore talk like James Carville trailer crash in terms of how she talks about other human beings, not just Amy Tarkanian, but others. This is who she really is, and it came out then. She tried to pretend to be the classy, defeated candidate and put out a statement of concession and called Zach Conine the treasurer. That's all an act. This is the real Michelle Fiore. She is not a good person. Amy Tarkanian and I have disagreed many times on things, but Amy is a good and wonderful person in many ways. She's a phenomenal mother. People don't even know that side of her. For her to have to absorb that, for others to have to hear the, and I'll use the word, Brian, slanderous things that she said on stage at Stoney's with that idiot chairman, Michael McDonald, standing right next to her, and Sigal Chattah, who has said her share of unhinged things up on stage there. This is the Republican Party in Nevada. This is who they are.
Yeah, and you just alluded to that. That was my next question to you. Not just Michelle Fiore. You have Michael Ronald McDonald, as I like to call him, standing there laughing, and you have others there. And I spoke to a few people, Jon, that were at that event, and they said to me, oh, yeah, those were despicable comments. And my response to them was, then why didn't you say something? Why didn't somebody take the microphone from her? Why didn't somebody stand up and say that is inappropriate? You shouldn't be talking about anybody that way, especially Amy Tarkanian. They're all cowards, aren't they, Jon? Nobody's saying anything that night or even today.
But this is where they are right now, Brian. This is how they behave towards Trump when he does outrageous stuff. They won't call him out. Even Joe Lombardo, who is about to become governor and is not like any of these people, had to, bend the knee to Trump after saying he was a sound president during the debate, then went to great later that afternoon. And by the time he was on stage with him, he was the greatest president ever. This is what the Republican Party has become. It is a cult where this kind of low-life behavior is not just tolerated, but celebrated. And don't get me wrong, I know a lot of wonderful Republicans. I'm not doing like some of my best friends are Republicans thing on here, but there are. But so many of them won't say a damn word because they're afraid of angering the quote-unquote base.
You agree? I agree with you 100%. If you're just joining us, he is Jon Ralston from the Nevada Independent. Okay, Jon, let's talk a little bit about the local election spectrum. Obviously, the news that broke out yesterday is that Adam Laxalt finally conceded. Did that surprise you at all, being that he is an election denier, that he actually finally conceded that he lost?
It surprised me it took as long as he did. He clearly wants to run for something again. That's all he does, right? And so he'll run for something again. And the election denying shtick is pretty much worn thin. He avoided talking about that for much of the campaign, but Catherine Cortez Masto did call him out on it in a few venues. But that concession was really something too. It was obviously written by somebody other than Adam Laxalt. And the tone, I still can't believe, I'm sorry to say this, people are saying how classy he was in that concession speech and how great that he conceded, because he is, as you pointed out, an election denier. What a low bar to get over, right? Yeah. That he's classy. And he still had to talk about how, we lost because of mail ballots and ballot harvesting. I have one question for you, Brent. How did the guy at the top of the ticket win then? Joe Lombardo won.
That is a fantastic point, and that's what I bring up all the time. If people want to talk about how mail-in ballots are so bad, then what about all the Republicans in this country that won? Why aren't they talking about that? Makes absolutely no sense to me. One thing I do want to bring up with you is that there was not one election denier that ran for Secretary of State throughout the country, not just Jim Marchant here, that won. What do you make of that?
It's hard to, I don't know all the details at a granular level of these other campaigns, Brian, so I hesitate to comment on it and to say that there's national recognition now that these people don't belong in office. But I'm hoping that what happened in those other states is what happened here, is that people came out, major business groups came out and said no to Jim Marchant. You had Republicans like Amy Tarkanian and others say no to Jim Marchant. And by the way, Michelle Fiore, who is either not much better or worse than Jim Marchant when it comes to election denial and being completely unhinged. So listen, I think it's good that they all lost. It's important for democracy in America. But I want people to take a step back before they say everything's right with the world again. Jim Marchant got more than 450,000 votes. It's not like he lost on a landslide. Yeah. A few other things go differently. I think Cisco Aguilar's campaign at the end exposed him pretty well on TV. I thought they waited too long, and I was quite concerned that he had a chance to win based on the polling. But this is not a sea change. This is a phew, we survived this.
Yeah. John, in your estimation, why did Steve Sisolak lose his re-election campaign?
A lot of people have asked me that question, as you might imagine, since the results came in, Brian. And here's what I'd say. It's the same answer as to how did Catherine Cortez Masto survive, which is this. When you lose by 14,000 votes, and that's what it's going to end up being for Steve Sisolak out of a million cast, it's not just one thing. It's a confluence of things. And was there a straw that broke the camel's back? I don't know. But a lot of people, Democrats, independents, and Republicans, blame Steve Sisolak for what I call the COVID hangover, whether fairly or not. And I think he had to make some really, really difficult decisions that he knew would be a political liability. So that certainly cost him. The way that Lombardo's campaign exploited the so-called North Shore scandal, that certainly cost him. And Lombardo's campaign did what very few Republican campaigns have been able to do in this state in recent years, Brian, and that they threaded the needle. They went up against the Democratic machine that has been very, very effective, and they barely survived.
Yeah. On a national spectrum, what do you make of Donald Trump's speech last night? I mean, I was going over all the lies in his speech yesterday, and it seemed to me that it was kind of boring, and it wasn't the normal Donald Trump energy-wise. I mean, I think a lot of Republican pundits were saying that yesterday as well. What did you make of the speech? We all knew the announcement was coming, but what did you make of what took place last night at Mar-a-Lago?
I have to be honest with you, Brian. I was happily and then unhappily at the Golden Knights game last night and did not have to listen to Donald Trump's speech, and I have not taken the time to watch it. I don't care what he said, and I'm an outlier on this. Everyone thinks I'm nuts. I said it in a speech yesterday. He will not be on the ballot in 2024. Mark my words.
That would not surprise me one bit. By the way, I'm sorry about the Vegas Golden Knights yesterday. How did they lose to the Sharks, John? What the hell happened there?
It was terrible. They gave away the game. They gave away the game in the third period. It happened in the space of about 2 minutes. They had a power play, don't score. I know you don't really want to ask the answer to this, but I'm going to tell you anyhow. They had a power play, don't score. Then they get a penalty, and the Sharks get a goal. And then it was difficult. My stepdaughter's a huge Golden Knights fan, and I love taking her to the games with my wife and we still have a great time there. But I happily did not think of Donald Trump once during that entire game.
I applaud you for that. And maybe I talk about Donald Trump a little bit too much these days, but I just think he's such a danger to this country, and he has been for quite some time. And he's caused so much damage. And, people want to bring up how, the cost of eggs have gone up and gas prices and all that. And by the way, I don't blame Joe Biden for all of that either. But, the dangers that are happening in this country and the election denying, do you feel that maybe we're on the downhill ride now, and maybe the election deniers, maybe most of these Republicans are saying, okay, we probably need to go a different route? Because I don't know if that's the case with Trump running again, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, Carrie Lake lost. We know that. She's not going to concede ever. But what do you make of this? Do you think that we are on the downhill with this type of rhetoric and election denying, or do you feel like the fact that Trump is running again, it's not going anywhere?
I don't think there's any percentage in what I do or what you do, Brian, in not being optimistic and not thinking, okay, maybe we are moving away from this. But it's going to be very difficult. The damage that already has been done, and it's not just Trump, by the way, it's all of the people who are supposed leaders in elective office and in the business community and in the political parties in each state who have gone along with this and echoed this election denialism. They have caused 70% of Republicans to believe the 2020 election was stolen. You can't just undo that overnight. And as I said to you earlier, the fact is Jim Marchant and Michelle Fiore did not lose in landslides. They barely lost. I mean, they clearly lost, but they barely lost. And so, listen, I hope that this is the first sign that we're moving away from it. But if he's still going to be in the forefront, and if these people are not going to give up saying what they have said, I mean, Adam Laxalt, the candidate for U.S. Senate in Nevada, has never recanted anything that he said about the 2020 election. He's never apologized for any of that, and he didn't in that concession statement. My feeling on this, I've been very outspoken about this and very public about it, is until you apologize or recant or both, I don't want to hear anything you have to say, because you are disqualified from holding public office, in my estimation.
Couldn't agree with you more. One of my biggest concerns with Joe Lombardo, and I don't think the sky is going to fall. He's not one of those election deniers, but he is a Trumper, and I think at times two-faced. And we can go on and on about criticisms of Joe Lombardo, but this is my biggest criticism, John, as you, a member of the media, and myself. You heard the story about how a member of the Las Vegas Sun wasn't allowed to see his acceptance speech. They wouldn't let that reporter in, who I spoke with, by the way, and the reporter was told, "Oh, there's not enough room for you." Now, we all know that was a lie. Lombardo is the one who, with the Klubeck situation where they were texting each other. We all know that story where Klubeck released the text messages where Lombardo said he basically wanted to get rid of the Las Vegas Sun if he becomes governor. I find that to be dictatorship. When they start doing that, I get very, very concerned. Sisolak didn't like some reporters in this town, but he never said, no, that person can't come in. That person can't come in. This, to me, this is very dangerous and very concerning. If Lombardo's going to be the governor and he's not going to allow, or members of his staff, which goes through him, are not going to allow certain members of the media to cover an event and get information. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, I mean, you said a lot there, and let me just say generally what my feeling is about this is I always think it's a mistake, no matter how hostile you might think an outlet is to you, if you're an elected official, to cut them off. There is no percentage in that, because they're going to still write about you, do whatever they're going to do, and you should always try to get your side out to them. So I've been cut off by people. I was cut off by Harry Reid, who I'm writing a book about, for a couple of years, and when he finally decided not to, I'm not making this about me, I'm just trying to make a point here. When he finally decided to talk to me again, he said, "Who do you think lost in this, Senator? I wrote columns about you for 2 years, and you didn't talk to me." So I think it's a mistake from a substantive point of view. But let me get back to something you said. The stupid flippant comment that Lombardo made in that text to Klubeck is all that was. He's not going to try to shut down the Las Vegas. That's just nonsense. And the Sun's leadership totally overreacted to that to try to draw attention to the Sun. Okay, been there, seen that. I get it. Listen, you can't judge someone for what they do right in the aftermath of a very, very nasty campaign. And so I do not think that Joe Lombardo is going to make it a practice of excluding the media. If he does that, then I think it becomes a serious issue once he actually becomes governor. But right after a campaign, people say stupid things. They do stupid things. I cut them some slack. I can't believe this is going to be the practice of the Lombardo administration.
Well, I'm happy to hear you say that, and I hope you're right. Because
I could be wrong. I could be wrong. We don't know what kind of governor he's going to be.
We remember what the White House did and Trump did with Jim Acosta with his credentials, and it's happened in the Trump administration. I hope you're right. I hope Lombardo doesn't do this, because if he does, they all want to talk about freedom of speech. Well, what about freedom of the press? We can't have these tax.
I think if he doesn't when he's governor, we should all yell at the top of our lungs. I think
that's fair to say.
I can't believe he's going to do that. But you know what? It's possible that I'm wrong. I know the people around him, and they're not dumb. But it's a much bigger question what kind of governor Joe Lombardo is going to be, because he really is still relatively unfamiliar with state issues, and so what his policies are going to be, we're going to get a good sense of that once he starts hiring people in his administration. If he's just going to hire, as you would put it, Trumpers or MAGA types, or substantive policy people who know how to deal with the legislature. I think it's going to be the latter. I'm going to go back to what I said, Brian. Let's be hopeful. Let's be hopeful.
I'm okay being hopeful. And that was my last question for you. But, as Joe Lombardo, the sheriff, I don't think he was the most transparent sheriff. I think Kevin McMahill is going to be a great sheriff. I know Kevin pretty well. I think he's a decent man, and he is transparent. And I think he'll be a better sheriff. Again, those are some of my issues with Joe Lombardo. He doesn't like to be challenged. He gets angry when people challenge him. That could be a reporter, or maybe it could be someone within his staff. I've talked to people that have worked for him at Metro. Some say good things about him. Some say not so good things about him. He seems to be a hot-tempered guy. He doesn't like to be challenged. And we all know when you put your name in the hat and when you're going to be our next governor, you're going to be challenged by a lot of people and a lot of Democrats. That is another concern I have for Lombardo. Do you think that's fair?
I don't know. Listen, temperament's always an issue in politics, but I've never met anybody in elective office, from governor down to city council, who likes being challenged. Okay, right. They have a certain level of ego when they run for the job, and they get it. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can be if it descends into narcissism and they don't listen to reason, and they think they're always right. Again, right. I don't. Metro has always been a relatively opaque organization, no matter who the sheriff is. Cops generally don't want to share information with the public if they don't have to. That's neither a criticism or praise. It's an observation. And I cut my teeth covering cops way back when, and probably before you were born. So the bottom line is, I know how cops are. I know what their mentality is in general. Listen. I don't think Joe Lombardo yet, and this is not necessarily a criticism either, because it could have been said maybe of Steve Sisolak as well, but to a lesser extent, has no idea what he's in for, being governor and having to deal with a democratically controlled legislature that doesn't really care what he wants.
Yeah, no, very true. Well, John, I'll say this in closing, my friend. You have always been the go-to guy for me in my life when it comes to elections, local elections, and you do such a great job, you and your staff over there at the Nevada Independent, which is a nonprofit. I recommend anybody go there and donate and help, because you are the voice of reason. I've always said that about you. And how much sleep have you had since Election Day? That's what I want to know. Like, what was the average night of sleep for Jon Ralston, like the day after Election Day? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, listen, the answer is certainly not enough. And I really do at some point need to get some rest. But, you can operate for a few days on adrenaline, no matter how old you are. But it takes its toll eventually. So I'll relax at some point.
Good. Relax. I've watched all your appearances, especially on MSNBC, and you're awesome, John. And I'm sorry for bugging you all week, but I appreciate you taking the time to come on, as always, man. You're the best. You know how much I respect you and what you do over there at the Nevada Independent. Jon Ralston.
I've told you this before, Brian. Sorry to interrupt you. I've told you this before, but listen, I do go on TV a lot during election times, and I go on radio and I do podcasts, and nobody is as prepared as you are. You're not just some guy who just talks. You know your stuff. You talk to other people. You've read stuff, and I'm not just blowing smoke just because I'm talking to your audience. I'm telling you, people don't know how rare that is in the business that you're in, and so I appreciate it. And that's why, while you are very annoying and a pain, that I decided to come on eventually.
That's what all my ex-girlfriends say about me too. So, yeah, join the club. No, John, I appreciate those words. That really means a lot. And I'll try not to bug you too much, but I always appreciate it when you come on. Jon Ralston, everybody. Thank you so much, John. Great to see you. Get some rest, my friend.
My pleasure.
Appreciate that. That's Jon Ralston. Very nice, kind words. And I mean, everything I've said about him, there are not many people like Jon Ralston. I mean, he just said the same thing about me. And yes, he's right. I could be very annoying. Just join the club, everybody. No, I was bugging John to come on last week, and we know how busy he was, and I really do appreciate him coming on. But say what you want about some of his opinions.